Good evening, everyone. I just want to welcome you all to the Florida House Book Club. We are having our final Zoom call of the year. And this is a really fun one, a special one. We are hoping to start a new tradition. We've asked several booksellers from around the state to talk to us about holiday gift-giving books and books that are on a must-read list, maybe for the new year. So I hope you all will grab a pen and paper and write some ideas and titles down. We are doing this today. It's a special day at Florida House because this is the birthday of Rhea Childs. This would have been her 92nd birthday. She is the founder. It was her idea to have an embassy in the nation's capital where Florida can be highlighted really throughout the world. Our project at Florida House is to be an ambassador of Florida and to promote and connect and to cultivate all kinds of and champion all things Florida to everyone in the world. It's really a lot of fun. Mrs. Childs was a huge proponent of education, and the book club really has come out of her love of education. A lot of Florida House programming has to do with education. And so a few years ago during the pandemic, we started Zoom programming and we started our book club. We read 4 books a year. I hope you'll tell your friends, your fellow book club members to join us. And the more the merrier. It's a lot of fun. Tonight, we have the pleasure of introducing 3 booksellers from 3 bookstores around Florida. We're going to begin in Tallahassee, where I am a trustee, and we will head down to Key West. We will go to 3 different booksellers from different bookshops. We'll begin with Sally Bradshaw at Midtown Reader, and then we will be hearing from Amanda White at Writer's Block in Winter Park, and we will end our program with Emily Berg in Books and Books Key West. This should be a lot of fun. We have asked each bookseller to talk about 10 books that they would recommend, and it's really been a lot of fun. There was absolutely no overlap in the list they suggested, and so we will begin our programming by hearing from Sally Bradshaw from the Midtown Reader here in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Mary. This is a treat to be not only with other booksellers, but also book lovers during the holidays. Well, really anytime. And particularly to be doing this for Florida House. Prior to being a bookseller, I was actually living in the political world, and I'm originally from Mississippi. And the first time I ever went to Florida House was with my roommate at the time who worked for Senator Connie Mack. And I remember thinking, why doesn't Mississippi have a house like this? Maybe there is one now, but there was not when I went to Florida House. And as I stayed in the political process, went to Florida House many times. It's a respite for weary Florida travelers, art, culture, history, so many wonderful things. So I'm really grateful to Mrs. Childs and, of course, the Childs family for being so supportive of, as you have said, Florida's embassy. So it's a treat to be here with you. And I've got 10 terrific reads. They're all over the map, and I can't believe my fellow booksellers and I didn't overlap. This makes it a lot of fun. So I'm going to start with the book that won Best Nonfiction, The Swamp Peddlers by Jason Buick last year. For those of you who don't know it, the Florida Book Awards is sponsored by the Department of State, and they have a competition every year for books in every genre. Jason Buick's a former reporter, I guess, journalist, writer. He's written several books. This is an amazing history of Florida told through the eyes of development. And before you yawn and say, that sounds really boring, Sally, let me tell you, it is anything but. This is the story of the swamp peddlers who sold undevelopable land in Florida in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and into the 70s. There was no agency that could stop them from doing this. And they advertised this land in many cases as $10 down, $10 a month. People had this concept that they were coming to the beach, and instead all they saw was a man-made canal. And this happened all over the state, actually. It's really a remarkable read, and I highly recommend it. It reads like fiction, and there's also a little political intrigue as well. So The Swamp Peddlers, Jason Buick, nonfiction win of the year for the Florida Book Awards. I highly recommend it for the folks that love history and love Florida. Next book, another Florida read, One by One, The Stars. This is a collection of essays by Ned Stuckey French. Ned was a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is renowned, and hired to teach creative writing narrative nonfiction at Florida State. And for those of you who don't know this, Florida State in Tallahassee is a top 5 creative writing program. People compete to come in and write and learn to write at Florida State. Ned died after a long battle with cancer last year, and his wife, Elizabeth, who is also a creative writing professor at FSU and his closest friend, published this collection of essays. It's a lovely walk down memory lane, told through the ideas of a young boy, then a young man, then an adult who becomes a dad through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've become quite partial to short stories and essays because I have so little time to read. Everyone thinks booksellers but with an essay collection, you can read a wonderful essay, put it down, and feel like you've really accomplished something. And I love this book, One by One, The Stars, Ned Stuckey French. Next book up is the one I'm nervous about talking about now because David Powell, the author, is on with us tonight, and his lovely wife, Vicki, both Tallahasseans, 90 Miles and a Lifetime Away. This is a remarkable read published by UPress of Florida this year. David, I hope you're entering this, or UPress is in the Florida Book Awards. It's really just sort of a remarkable read set over, well, it's actually a series of interviews with Cuban immigrants who came in after Castro came to power. And each interview is almost like a chapter. And then in addition to these recordings that David puts in the book of his interviews with people who had these fascinating stories, he gives a lot of context and history. I feel like it is a must read for anybody who lives in Florida. Can you hear me? It's a must read by anybody who lives in Florida, and it is a terrific, terrific Christmas gift and Christmas read. So 90 Miles and a Lifetime Away, and David is on with us tonight. I know would answer any questions. Next book is The Marsh Queen. This is actually a fiction with a Florida tie. Virginia Hartman is an original Palm Beach resident. She is now a professor of creative writing at George Washington in DC, my alma mater. So I'm a big fan of hers. This is sort of our answer in Florida to Where the Crawdads Sing, I guess I would say. It's a story about a young ornithologist who works for the Smithsonian, actually illustrates birds for the Smithsonian. She's called by her brother. He says, "Come home. Mom is really not doing well." So she comes home to care for her ailing mom. But as she begins to go through her mom's belongings and letters, she realizes that not everything is accurate about what she's previously been told about her father's death. There's a little mystery here. There's also a love interest. It covers the spectrum, and it's set right outside of Tallahassee in a fictional town. The Marsh Queen, Virginia Hartman, great, great read. Next book, The Fabulous Cheryl Strayed. This is a 10-year anniversary edition of Tiny Beautiful Things. I'm sorry, you may not be able to see the titles right because I'm showing them this way, so maybe you need a mirror or something, but everybody knows Cheryl Strayed from Wild, also made into a movie, her memoir about her hike on the Pacific Crest Trail years ago. She's also taken on the role of advice columnist, and this is a collection of sort of her conversations with people over the years through her Dear Sugar advice column. Every one of my daughters who are either in college or graduate school is getting a copy of this. Don't tell them. And they're stocking this year. It's out in paperback, 10-year anniversary edition. I love, love, love Cheryl Strayed. Okay, now we're getting serious with some heavy nonfiction. This is John Meacham's newest book, And There Was Light. I think it's going to become the definitive biography of our generation on Lincoln. Everyone knows Meacham. He's probably the best known presidential historian of our time. This is a remarkable look at Lincoln, but not just his strengths, his weaknesses, his challenges, his questions about his faith, how he made decisions, why he made the decisions he made. It's really, really an excellent read. So if you have someone in your family who loves presidents, loves Lincoln, loves nonfiction, this is kind of a thick book, not too thick, but it's a great, great gift book, John Meacham on Lincoln. Okay, the next book, and I have the same problem that Writer's Block had, I'm sold out of. I sold out today, so I ran a picture of the cover, but I can get them within a couple of days. The Daughters of Yalta. This is an amazing read by Catherine Katz, who is a historian from Harvard. I like nonfiction. that reads like fiction. Not really into nonfiction that doesn't read exciting like fiction, and this definitely fits that bill. This is the story of the daughters of Churchill, Roosevelt, and Averell Harriman, who was the U.S. ambassador to Russia during World War II, putting together the Yalta Conference, which was put together to sort of determine the future of Europe and the division of Germany after the war. The war was not over, but they knew that the war was coming, and this was put together, and it's told through these young women's letters. It's really a remarkable form of storytelling, out in paperback. Absolutely love it. Daughters of Yalta. Couple more. Got to have a cookbook on a Christmas list. You know, Anna Garden, how easy is that? She is amazing. The Barefoot Contessa. I have made the Chipotle cheddar biscuits out of this. They were a huge hit over Thanksgiving. I'm telling you, this reads like a novel. You can sit down with a glass of wine and go through the recipes that Anna picked up and built during the pandemic when she was cooking every night. These are you can freeze them in advance. You can put them in your fridge and they'll last a couple days. It's just the next in the dozens of Barefoot Contessa cookbooks. Great read, great price point on this too as a gift book. Two more, got a couple of holiday books to make you familiar with. The wonderful thing about indie bookstores is that we do get books that you wouldn't necessarily find by browsing on Amazon. And so this is one of those books that's done very well for us, Every Valley. It's actually an Advent with the scriptures based on Handel's Messiah, and it's from Westminster John Knox Press. Again, something you wouldn't find just by going through a big box store or Amazon. Every section of this devotional is tied to a portion of Handel's Messiah, and it really is a lovely history as well as an Advent study. So I recommend it, and books like this season for gifts. And finally, I have to have my favorite children's book of the last several years, The Great Spruce. This is a wonderful book by John Duvall with remarkable illustrations by Rebecca Gibbon. If you're from Tallahassee or anywhere, and let's say Ocala North, trees are your thing. And we have beautiful live oaks in Tallahassee, as you know, with Spanish moss. The Great Spruce is the story of a young boy and his grandfather who decorate a tree on their farm every year for Christmas. People come from miles away to see this tree. And of course, men from the big city come and decide they want to cut it down and make it the big city Christmas tree. And so crisis ensues. What to do? I'm not going to tell you. It would be a spoiler. This is a terrific book for a parent or grandparent to share with a child over the holidays. Gorgeous illustrations, beautiful hardback paper book. And that, Mary and everyone else, is my last book.
Thank you, Sally. That was so great. What fun. There are many already that I want to get. So this is wonderful. Now we're going to shift and go down to Winter Park. And Writer's Block has Amanda White ready to speak about their top 10 books for the holiday season.
Yes, hello, welcome. So I figured it would be kind of fun to take you guys on a small tour of the store while I talk about these books, if you haven't had a chance to hop down to the Winter Park area. It is a lovely historic district. Park Avenue is absolutely beautiful, brick-lined streets, the whole shebang. They actually closed the street for a Christmas event this evening. I believe it's the tree lighting. So this is the length and breadth of our store. And I'm going to start us out over in our fiction section to talk about one of our local authors, our friend, Miss Kristen Harmel. She writes a lot of historical fiction. The Forest of Vanishing Stars is her second most recent book. It's the one that's out in paperback right now. And it is about a woman who lives in the woods in Europe during World War II. And it is a very interesting book because this woman is not Jewish, but a lot of Jewish refugees during World War II did wind up taking to the wilderness. And so with her survival skills, she actually helps out all of these people who are trying to escape from the Nazis. And it is just genuinely an extremely good read. It does have like some really interesting nature writing because they're out in the wilderness trying to survive. Very, very fun. And then I'm going to scooch over to our staff recommendations zone. We're also doing some blind date books that we're referring to as Secret Santa this year. And I'm going to talk about The House in the Cerulean Sea. A coworker of mine has described this as a warm chocolate chip cookie of a book. It is about a fantasy world in which children with magical abilities are put into a foster care system. And our protagonist is a gentleman whose job it is to investigate those foster homes and make sure that they are up to code and actually taking care of the kids. And he gets sent to this house that is the house in the Cerulean Sea. And he is not really told anything about anyone that is there. It is tip-top secret. Nobody knows anybody or what's going on at this house. And he gets there and he discovers this absolute band of misfits who the rest of the world are somewhat afraid of them, but he kind of winds up falling in love with them and taking care of these kids. And it's just such a sweet story. Even if you're not into fantasy, I think that people would enjoy this book simply because it is, as my coworker said, a warm chocolate chip cookie of a story. Floating over to classics, got to talk about our friend, Mr. Jack Kerouac, who actually did wind up living in Florida in St. Petersburg towards the latter half of his life. And On the Road, of course, is one of his classics. You might have had to read it in high school. A lot of people did, but it's still worth a revisit as an adult. It's such an interesting story, such an interesting perspective, all the different parts taking you to all different areas of the country and just the dysfunctional travel of these people. And then we're going to stay in this corner real quick in our sci-fi and fantasy zone. One of my favorite books that I'm currently reading is R.F. Kuang's Babel. This is, again, a fantasy novel. And the premise is that the way that magic works in their world is that it's based on translation. And it's based on what is lost in translation. So the magic is based on using one word from one language and the same word from a different language. And what the magic actually harnesses is that little bit of nuance that's lost between the two words, because there is no real correlation between two words in any two languages. And it is such a wonderful love letter to the concept of words and of language. And it's just beautiful. And R.F. Kuang actually did pop into our store a couple of years ago just because she happened to be visiting the area and signed some copies of her other books that we had, and was just a delight. Oh, and TJ Klune, who's the author of House in the Cerulean Sea, we actually just did an event with him with the Adult Literacy League, and he was also a delight. And we'll continue our walk into mysteries and thrillers. And we're going to talk about another one of my favorite books from this year, A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons. It is a period murder mystery set in London at London College, and it stars Saffron Everly, who is a full-time botanist, part-time mystery solver. And there's a little bit of a romance subplot, and it's just such a good time. I loved it. There is going to be a sequel coming out next year, and I'm genuinely excited to have it. I got the digital arc, and I have already been checking it out. And then we're going to scooch a little further into the store. There's the staff at the register hiding out back there. And we're going to scooch into our nonfiction area. We actually have a whole section of books about Florida. So what I'm going to highlight, speaking of how indie bookstores sometimes will have things that you wouldn't find in a big box, the Winter Park Chronicles, all about the history of this fine city in which we live. It just walks you through why Winter Park exists, the industries that it was founded on, why the roads are the way that they are, everything that you might need to know about Winter Park. And we have ones about Orlando, we have ones about just Florida, we have birding books, we have hiking books, anything you might need to know about your trip to Florida, you can probably find in that section. This is our area of journals and gifts. Ooh, ah. I hope this is not making anyone motion sick. The John Green book that we had put on our list to talk about was the Anthropocene Reviewed. Unfortunately, we have sold out of it. We do have Looking for Alaska, though, which is also a John Green book, but I am going to tell you about the Anthropocene Reviewed because I think it is a fascinating book. So John Green, you guys may or may not know, is a very popular young adult author. He and his brother Hank make a lot of digital content that has gotten very popular. A lot of it is very educational. And they have a podcast called The Anthropocene Reviewed. But what you might not know about these fellows is that they're actually from Orlando. One of John's young adult novels, Paper Towns, is set in Orlando. And The Anthropocene Reviewed is a book that he came out with last year that was essays about the Anthropocene era, which is the current geologic era in which we find ourselves. And so it's a lot of nonfiction writing of his observations, talking about the current world we find ourselves in, the state of that world, and it's just interesting stuff. And then continuing our tour, I am going to go back to the front of the store in a second, but I did want to show you guys, we've got a little coffee shop back here these days. I don't know if that was open last time any of you had visited us, but I just think it's a neat thing. do, 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 do. Sorry. All right. And then I have unfortunately not been keeping track of how many books I've talked about so far, so I don't know if I'm up to 10 or not yet. But I am going to talk about the most recent Louise Penny. Again, a really great mystery whodunit. If you guys are followers of Louise Penny, you're going to love this one. It follows our friend, oh my gosh, how do you pronounce his name again? It starts with a G, but can you tell I've forgotten? Gamache. I almost said Gauchon. That's a different guy. So yes, it follows Inspector Gamache solving another crime, as he often does. And I think, let me double check my list. Can you tell that I had to sub in at the last minute for an injury? Sorry. Let me double check and make sure that was everything I was supposed to talk about. Did you guys have any questions, or was that absolute chaos for you to try to follow my line of thought?
No, you're doing great.
Thank you. Oh, I forgot to talk about Disney, the elephant in Orlando. Everyone talks about the Walt Disney Company. So we do, of course, have a few Disney books. One that I think is particularly cool that we have right now is actually an art book about poster art in the Disney parks. It's just cool. I think they have gorgeous posters for all of their attractions, which they truly do not need to do, and yet they do. And then I'm gonna pop a little break here and double check my list. That might have me up to 10. Nope, the City Spies. There we go. Oh, goodness. So we're gonna go over to middle grade. So some of you may know, part of our team is at the Media Specialist Conference for Florida educators right now. And one of the guests there is James Ponte, who is another one of our local authors. He writes middle grade books. And one of his most popular series right now are the City Spies. And I swear I saw them earlier. I know it's here. There it is. Okay, this one's even autographed by the author. He will come in and sign them for us from time to time. But James is just a delightful fellow. We are his local bookstore. If you want to read a fun adventure of a bunch of 8 to 12-year-old kids investigating crimes and trying to figure out what is going on, the City Spies series is wonderful for that. And that may very well be it. Yep, I think that's it for me. I hope that wasn't too chaotic.
That was great. Thank you,
Okay,
Amanda.
Wonderful. Quite a
That
shift
was
of
really
pace
a
from our
lot of
previous
fun.
presenter. Oh, I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it.
It's really great to hear about the local authors of different communities. I think that makes it.
Yes. Yeah, we love our local authors so much and we love to work with them. So I like to highlight them when I can.
Oh, I think that's super. Well, now we are heading down to Key West where it's really warm. I think Emily Berg from Books and Books Key West is going to talk to us, and I believe she said it's in the 80s. It's going to be down to 46 in Tallahassee, so I'm a little bit envious. But Emily, I think, is up next to talk to us about books that people in her books, independent bookstore community, might want to read. What I love about independent bookstores is they each have their own communities, and it's really fun to see the different sorts of books that cater to the different communities around Florida. So, hi, Emily. What do you have for us tonight?
Hi. Well, I would have loved to have been on the sales floor so I could have shown you all our floor, but we are actually open and there's a party going on in the art gallery next door, and I cannot speak if somebody's in the room speaking with me. So you did a great job, Amanda. It would be a disaster. So I am where the magic happens, in the office. This is Books and Books at the studios of Key West. We opened in 2016. For almost all of our booksellers, it's the first and only bookstore that we've ever worked in. We're all like learning as we go. And I've been told this is what all bookstore offices look like. So I'm not embarrassed to share it with all of you. So to start off, we have, this is one of our top selling books, The Last Train to Paradise. You all may sell it as well. It's Les Standiford. It's an amazing book. It reads like a novel. It's nonfiction about Flagler's Railroad from Miami to Key West, which was of course taken out in a hurricane. We still have remnants of it if you ever drive down from Miami. So while this is an amazing book just to read, we actually have the Centennial version, which I think is published through Books and Books Press, the Miami stores. So I don't actually know if you can get it elsewhere. But if anybody's interested in selling it in their stores, let me know. I can talk to Mitchell Kaplan about it. But it's got these amazing full color photos, black and white photos. And we sell this to people who have already read the book and love this book and just want a nicer version. It's also a great gift version. So it's a wonderful book to have during the holidays. Moving on to more nonfiction, but maybe a more fun nonfiction, is Mile Marker Zero, A Movable Feast of Key West. So we have a huge literary history down here in Key West. Amazing authors, more authors than I certainly ever realized lived here, and more pop up every single day. We actually have a Key West Pantheon above the store, around the shelves there. We have the names of all the authors that have since passed. That's the one thing you have to do to get on the wall, is to pass away, just to keep it fair. And every time somebody passes, we're like, oh, we have to put them up on the wall. And it's people I didn't even realize lived and worked here. So this book is amazing. It goes through, it's William McKean. It goes through the various people, of course, Hemingway, but it covers Jimmy Buffett, some other living authors, Tom Corcoran, and it's just a very rich history from the literary perspective for Key West. A couple of people that are in that book, as I just mentioned, Tom Corcoran, who is a mystery author, used to live in Isla Mirada in the Keys. I think he lives somewhere in Central Florida now, but comes down to Key West fairly often, is an amazing author, but also a great photographer. So he has this black and white photo book. Oh, sorry. See, we are fully operational here. He has this photo book, which is amazing. We actually sell a fair amount of these for guest books for weddings. It's how they sign in for their weddings. So it's a great book that we sell all year round, but we do really well with it at the holidays. And of course, the big chief papa himself is Ernest Hemingway down here. Several of Hemingway's books just went into the public domain. So we now have different versions, which is fun for us because we had been selling the same editions over and over and over again. And now Penguin put out this really beautiful, actually, I think I'm holding it upside down. It's really beautiful version of The Sun Also Rises. So again, for people who have already read the book and loved it, it's a nice look on the shelf. So we're reselling it, but then also people who have not yet read Hemingway. Hemingway is one of those authors that not for everyone. And maybe you were forced to read Old Man in the Sea in middle school and it ruined it for you. And what we're trying to do is say, give The Sun Also Rises a shot, give To Have and Have Not a shot. There's other ones out there that you may like more. And if it's a beautiful edition, all the better. On the same vein, this is a book by Mark Kurlansky, author of Salt and Cod. He looks a little bit like Hemingway and also has had a life that sort of mirrors Hemingway's life in a lot of ways. And he has been fighting that, which is great because in a personal life, maybe not the one you want to idolize. So this is his book, The Importance of Not Being Earnest. He did an event. We've been doing multi-store events since COVID started. And so they're hosted by either the Books and Books in Miami stores and stores all across the country. And they're great because we all promote them separately. We can get some bigger name. We had Colson Whitehead and some of these other ones that maybe this store alone wouldn't be able to support, but altogether we've joined forces. And Mark Kurlansky was one that was nice enough to do that event with us. So this is a fun book for anyone coming in who went to Hemingway's house and knows some of his history and maybe doesn't want to read him, but wants to read about somebody's experience and their life with him. My pile's gonna fall over. A little history. We have the hidden history of the Civil War in Florida. This covers most of the state, but Key West is in an interesting spot for the Civil War because we're actually part of the Union and have currently 3 forts still not operational, but that can be visited on the island. 4 if you count the Dry Tortugas. And so there's a lot of Civil War history here. We had the runners come through, a lot of historical fiction written about it, but this is a great book by History Press. It's distributed by Arcadia, who we have lots of their books. They do a wonderful job kind of separating out and getting, if you want real specific, I want a book about Duval Street, we've got it through Arcadia, thank you. And so this is great, it's not huge. It also has photos. We have sold this at, to younger readers because we have younger readers that are really interested in military history, but maybe can't handle a huge book like that. And the content is appropriate. It doesn't get too nitty gritty with all the things that war can get nitty gritty with. So moving on to some fun stuff, I've got, as someone just said, you have to have a cookbook. So I have a couple here. The Cuban sandwich, which there is an ongoing battle for who has the best Cuban sandwich.
I want to read that.
Yeah. This is the history of the sandwich itself. I should have read it a little more thoroughly. It does have recipes to see if they covered the turf war down here. All of the best Cuban sandwich shops in Key West are in laundromats. I don't know why. It's just a fact. And they're all delicious. So this is great. It's kind of a fun, easy sell book for people who, haven't been down here very much. It's again, not a big book. It's fun. It's a great gift for anybody who likes culinary lit and history, but also just is not taking anything too seriously. So it's a really great book. We also have the Florida Keys and Key West Chef's Table. This is a book that's put out every year. This is the newest edition. The previous edition lasted about 5 years just because they didn't reprint because of COVID. I was in the last one. I'm not in this one, so not as big of a seller for us, but it goes through every restaurant, not every restaurant, but a majority of the restaurants on the island and gives some of the top recipes. So really great for people who are visiting because it's a thorough guide and something that they can take home with them, but also people who live here because we do have some really amazing restaurants on the island and they don't always share the recipes when you go in, but if you buy this book, then you get their recipes. So that's super exciting. And then my final 2, and I can't tell how fast I'm talking. I literally spend all day talking about books. And then if I'm in front of other booksellers, I get very nervous about it for some reason. The final 2 are fiction that we have. This book, The Blue Marlin by Lee Smith. I'm sure most people are familiar with Lee Smith. Her book Dime Store has been hugely popular for a very long time. This book is fiction, but it is pretty strongly based on an experience that Lee had as a young child, came down here with her family. Her parents, I shouldn't say the protagonist's parents, are going through a divorce. They come down to Key West and stay at the Blue Marlin Hotel, which is still in operation today, still has this old sign with the big neon marlin over it. And at the time that they come, Operation Petticoat is on the island filming. So there's all these movie stars staying at her hotel. And for a 12-year-old whose family is falling apart, she just sort of dives right into the story. And it's a really sweet book. It covers Key West. And I think it gives a good view of, life continues here. Even when you're on vacation, you come down here on vacation, life goes on and it's not always easy, but it's very nostalgic and sweet, and it's also just like very cute. So it's a good little stocking stuffer of a book. And then my last book, which I'm sure if you've not already heard about, you are going to hear about. It's the Indie Next pick for December, and it's The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton. I'm really proud of myself because this is the first time that I grabbed an ARC off the shelf and read it so far in advance that I beat everybody else in the store to the punch and was able to start like just going crazy about a book before they had already been like, yeah, I already read that. And so I was thrilled now that it's getting the recognition that it deserves. It's also probably one of the only books that every bookseller in the store has agreed on. We've all read it and we all love it, which never happens. We all have very different tastes and would love to fight about books. And we do a lot of like, it's good, it's not for me, it's for you. This one is for all of us, for sure. It takes place, starts off present day Florida. A young family is getting ready, prepping for a hurricane that's coming. Some of them want to leave, some of them don't want to leave. We've all been there if we live in Florida trying to decide whether to leave or not. And eventually the storm comes, and that's really just the beginning of the story. It follows Wanda, a child who is born shortly thereafter, through her life living in Florida as the storms increase, get stronger, flooding. Miami ultimately has to be evacuated. I'm not giving anything away by saying that. It's the changing landscape of our state and what the future may look like. But at the heart of it, it's about this girl and her family and not leaving because it's their home and wanting to make it work. So it's a really amazing book. We're super excited. It comes out on Tuesday. So we've been pre-selling a lot and we're really excited to have it here and start to sell it for the holidays and just in general. And Lily will be with us on the 8th. So next Thursday after the book releases. So I think that's it. That's all the ones that I have for everyone. At least
That's really great. Your point is well taken. I think all of you who've presented books would be willing to ship books to any customer, right? I could call your store and any of you. I really do appreciate this. I mean, I think these titles are also great. They're also very different, but there's so many, we're seeing in the chat people participating saying, there are so many great suggestions, how we wish we could read them all, but the really good gift giving suggestions too, which I think is terrific. And it's really fun to have David Powell on the call and his wife, Vicki, because David was just in Tampa at Oxford Exchange for our last book of the year. We featured his book and he gave a program. And if you were not able to attend, you can go to the Florida House website and go to the recorded call. This call will be recorded too, so that's something else you can do if you have friends or fellow bibliophiles who you want to send our way. That would be great, so they can hear all these wonderful suggestions. These are really good. I think you all look pretty rested and refreshed for being right in the throes of the holiday season. This was really a sacrifice of your time and talent and trouble here to help us in Florida promote wonderful, great reads from all three of your wonderful stores. We just can't thank Sally so much. Sally's also been a great advisor about this whole book club at the beginning. So thank you, Sally. And it's so great to meet you, Amanda. And I think you did a great job pinch hitting here. And it was fun to see your store. And Emily, it's wonderful to hear about the things that are happening down in Key West. So you had some great titles. These are so many books that I hadn't even heard of yet on the radar, which is really a lot of fun. So is there anything else any of you would like to talk about? Any activities that you have coming up that you'd like to tell us about while you're on the air? We have a little extra time.
Put us on the spot.
Oh no.
I mean, if you're in the Orlando Winter Park, Winter Garden area, we do actually have monthly book clubs that are starting up in person in January. If you'd like to read even more books than just the Florida House Book Club book picks. So that's like a fun recurring event that we've got over here.
I've got an announcement, Mary. We've got James Patterson coming to Tallahassee on January
Oh, that's
13th.
exciting.
Yes. So
That's
I've
really
often said he is the #1 selling author after God. I think after the Bible, he's sold more books than anybody else. And he's coming with Mike Lupica for their new book, The House of Wolves, which is supposed to be a cross between Succession and Yellowstone. That's how they're marketing it. So it should be fun, but we're partnering with Holy Comforter Episcopal School because like you guys, our store is not quite big enough to have James Patterson fans, unless we were running them through very quickly. So we'd love for anybody to go to midtownreader.com if you're interested in seeing Patterson, and you can purchase a ticket and get a book.
That sounds really like a lot of fun. Do you have anything you want to share, Emily?
We have, well, like I said, Lily Brooks Dalton coming. We have a couple of other events towards the end of January that aren't quite solidified yet, but in January every year, there's the Key West Literary Seminar in Key West. So that is a separate nonprofit that puts on, but we are the official pop-up store. So they bring in about 40 different authors that we do signings for, and it's a test of my sanity, but it's really fun. We basically run two stores for the month of January. So if you happen to be in Key West at that time, definitely check it out. It's amazing. Some of the people that I believe Kevin Young is their keynote this year. And they've had, in past years, the keynote has been Jamaica Kincaid and Margaret Atwood. So they usually bring in some bigger names that, again, we have it out at the amphitheater here. So it's nice to be outside. In January, it cools down in Key West, which means it gets to be about 76 degrees. Or so. And we all wear sweaters and scarves out and sell books outside. So it's fun.
So we have a question from Diana Beckman, who I have not had a chance to introduce. We have some people on the call. Diana is the executive director for Florida House. And her question is to you booksellers, is there a book that one of your fellow booksellers recommended that was a surprise to you? I mean, you all don't have to answer, but does anyone have something that was a surprise?
Are you asking specifically from the ones that we presented tonight that were suggested
Yes.
by our other
Mhm.
booksellers, or just in
Yes.
general?
No, are any of these 10 books that were, the question I believe was, are any of the 10 books that the other booksellers recommended, were any of them a surprise?
I don't know if it was a surprise, but I was excited to see the Bruce book recommended, because we don't really have Christmas trees down here, but kids love them. They're like mythical creatures. So I think that it would be a great one for us to have in, because I think the local kids, they just eat up anything that has snow represented in it too. It's very exciting for Key West kids that a lot of them have never seen it.
That's great. Good. So another question.
I was just going to add, Mary, real quick. I wasn't surprised. I thought they were all great recommendations. I love that none of us had a duplicate book
Right.
on our list. And I think that says a lot about independent bookstores and just the variety of options, you can find in every genre. And there's always at an indie bookstore. And again, I'm not trying to knock, Amazon well, yeah, I am, Amazon and big bookstores, but I mean, I think what we have are these little treasures, because all of the booksellers who are involved in buying spend hours and hours meeting with publishers, large and small, to pick out just a little treasure. I mean, we literally in Tallahassee, I look at books and think, Mary would like that. I bet she'd like that book. I mean, you literally think of customers as you're buying for them, which is what I think makes neighborhood bookstores so special and so important. So to me, it was a treat. We all picked out different books.
I think it was great. So much fun. Liz and I were anticipating these submissions, thinking we might have some difficulty. We had none. Another question that we've had that came in was, were there any other children's book recommendations? So I don't know if the booksellers who did not mention a children's book, I know in Writer's Block, you mentioned young adult and mid-grade books for sure.
Yes, we did young adult and middle grade. Is this person asking about children's books in terms of like picture books and board books, or are they talking more in the middle grade range? Do we know?
My guess is it's picture and board, because,
Okay.
but I don't know. The question wasn't specific.
It's fair. I am going to suggest very quickly, just in terms of as a good Christmas gift and a fun Florida thing. Sourcebooks actually publishes these local Christmas books. And so we have 'Twas the Night Before Christmas in Florida.
Cute.
So if you want to send it to perhaps someone who doesn't live here, but is a child that you know, and you're interested in teaching them about Florida, this book is extremely cute. Santa's flying over tons of different cities in the state, and it's just a fun little read.
Oh,
So I'd
that's
recommend
great.
that one.
That's absolutely perfect. Do you have another one, Emily, or no?
We do have so there is one tree that we use as a Christmas tree that grows out of the 7 Mile Bridge. His name is Fred. He's fairly famous, Fred the tree. It's tradition to wave to him when you cross the 7 Mile Bridge, and he is and he's survived many hurricanes. So he's a scrappy little thing that they put Christmas lights on every year. And Lee Guest, a local author, I was just looking to see if I had one on hand, wrote a book about Fred the tree. And it's a sweet little rhyming book about, you know, how to greet Fred and the history of what he's seen from being on that bridge for so long. I would suggest that.
Oh, great. We loved all of your recommendations, and we really do appreciate the time that you've taken. We appreciate our partnership with you and the other independent bookstores around the state. It's really a lot of fun as we build this community and this following. And we have a lot of people who don't join the Zoom call, though, who immediately afterward or in the next week or so will click on the link, which is a lot of fun. We think this program was really great. As I say, we do read 4 books a year, and our next book club Zoom call will be on February 7th. And I'm going to tell you the title. I don't know if you all have this book, but it is By Her Own Design, a novel of Anne Lowe. Do you all have that book? I'm just going to ask you booksellers, and we will. She is. It's a story based on. It's a book based on a remarkable woman. I don't want to talk too much about it. The author is in Atlanta, so we will be doing a Zoom call, but it should be a lot of fun, and it might be something you all might want to stock in your stores. Do any of your stores have that book? Have any of you all read it?
I'm checking our inventory to see if we have
I
it.
think we have it, but that's only because I cheated and Mary told me in advance this was going to be a book. So I think I have it, but I'm at home right now, so I have to check when I get in.
Okay, well, that's what a lot of us are going to be reading. We'll be doing our homework in preparation for that February 7th call, but that'll be
We
a lot
do
of
actually
fun.
have it on hand.
Good.
I just spotted we have 1 copy in each of our 2 stores, and I will definitely be ordering more in anticipation for you guys.
Yes, indeed. So I wanted to give you the heads up. And then we will publish, of course, a list of all of these wonderful suggestions tonight up on our website. So for those of you who might have missed taking notes, don't worry about that. That will be sent out in an email, I believe, after this call, and it will be up on our website. And in addition, we'll give plenty of advance notice for our 4 books that we're going to read in 2023. And you all have given us ideas. Who knows? Maybe one of these books we'll be reading in the book club in 2024. We're trying to be a little bit organized and plan in advance. It gives us time to read. So anyway, this has really been a very fun call. Thank you so much. And I love this. We'll probably continue to do it as an annual tradition. And we really appreciate your support and participation.